Hello and welcome to Web of Tomorrow, a podcast about the web and the people who build it. I'm Adam Garrett Harris. I talked with Kent C. Dodds a while back about how to jumpstart your career.
My name is Kent C. Dodds, and I work at PayPal as a software maker person.
All right, so we're talking about how to jumpstart your career. You had a talk about this about a year ago, and one of the things you mentioned is there's a talent shortage. So why is that?
Yeah, so I think I think it's pretty clear for anybody who has a fair amount of experience in software development that there's a talent shortage. And so, yeah, I think why that is, well, actually, I should say, I think Eric Elliott, quite a while ago, wrote a blog post about the talent shortage where he gives some actual numbers and stuff. But in any case, I think that part of the reason why there's a talent shortage is more or less about there being actually a talent shortage and more about the fact that companies aren't interested in training talent. And so, I have countless junior developers hit me up on help me find a job, or how can I set myself apart, whatever. The companies just aren't hiring and training these perfectly capable developers. I recently changed roles at PayPal, but my last team was mostly composed of developers that we hired straight out of a boot camp. And they were all fantastic. So I think part of the reason is companies are not even looking at candidates who are coming out of boot camps or school. And then if they are, their interview style is just broken. And so they miss out on these really awesome opportunities to hire these people. But in any case, whatever the reason there is, this industry has a wealth of opportunity, and so getting into it I'm not going to say it's easy because it's totally not easy, but there's just a lot of opportunity in this industry, which is pretty cool, and it's one of the cool things about this industry as well is you don't have to be in it for 15 years to start making a really big impact. I've only been I graduated just over 3 years ago with my degree and started working full time. And I speak internationally, and I give trainings and workshops and stuff. And I just I think it's super cool that you can jump in and start contributing really quickly in this industry, just because the way that that this industry works. So anyway, that's a bunch of words and thoughts.
So what was your degree in?
I graduated with a master's degree in information systems.
Okay. And did you start programming right away?
Yeah. So when I was in school, information systems is normally a degree that's more centered around project management and networking, not the social networking, but physical networking, stuff like that, system design kind of stuff. But at BYU, where I graduated, there was a bit more of a focus on the coding aspect, and there were a couple of classes that you could take to do coding stuff, and so I kind of focused on that, and I mostly did I did a lot of stuff on the side and internships where I just coded. I started coding for money in 2011, I think, while I was in school.
Okay. And so how did you decide to get into programming?
Well, that can be a long story or a short story. But
let's get the short version.
I'll give you a short one, yeah. So when I started at school back in 2007, I decided to do electrical engineering because my brother did that, and he was doing cool stuff with computers, and I thought computers are kind of neat. And so I had to take 2 programming classes And that was my first real exposure to programming. I did a little bit of HTML and CSS when I was in high school and stuff. But yeah, like I remember my friend trying to teach me what a string was in programming. It was, I think he was writing C or something. And it just like totally didn't make any sense to me. So when I got to college, I started taking these classes. And I did pretty well in these classes, but I just couldn't see myself programming all day. I thought it was dumb. So I was like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm not going to do the programming thing, but like there's more to electrical engineering than programming, right? So I don't know. So anyway, I went on a 2-year mission for my church. I got back and I decided to stick with electrical engineering until I realized that I'm terrible at math. And so I bounced around a little bit, got into accounting, and then I did not like that. So I ended up taking an information systems class where I had to do some computer things, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I switched majors to that, and then I got a job where they had me doing some monkey work, and I was like, well, I'm taking this Java programming class. I wonder if I can automate some of that monkey work. And so I did, and in the process of automating that, now I could see, okay, so this programming thing isn't just about like using Vim and like and getting totally lost in the whole environment and stuff. There's actually practical application where I can make an improvement in my own life and in the lives of others. And so that's when I got excited about it.
Nice. Did they ask you to use Vim in college?
Dude, it is the dumbest thing, but the TA was like, okay, everybody, I'm going to teach you how to use my favorite editor, Vim. And just like, it was a little while, like a couple months later, I think the professor found out and he was like, no. We're going to give them Eclipse and like they're going to be able to write in a real like IDE so that they're not lost in this little editor that you decided to teach them. It was so dumb. Yeah, so I haven't forgiven him for that.
Yeah. I'm sure what I've seen is a lot of people get into their first computer science class and then they feel like they've missed some sort of prerequisite and they're just so far behind in their very first class. And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. I felt like I was a little behind. I sat next to this kid who'd been programming since he was like 10 or something, and he was just toiling away on his computer and still doing really well, and it frustrated me. So actually, one thing that I did that I think was really helpful was the teacher asked if anybody wanted to be a tutor, and they just had this website where they'd list all the tutors, and then students could ask the tutors for help. And I was just as good as anybody else, or like less good than a lot of people. But I decided that I'd try to be a tutor, and that ended up being one of the best things that I did for my learning that year or that semester. It was awesome. So it forced me to get the homework finished earlier so that I could help other people do it, and in the so I learned first by doing the homework, and then when I was teaching somebody else, I learned where the gaps in my knowledge were, and it solidified everything for me. So that's like one of the big key takeaways from that talk, is like teaching is the way that you solidify your understanding and find the holes, the gaps in your knowledge where you need to fill that, because like you can read a book, but that's like, and you can even build something, but you don't really, you have a solid grasp on it until you've actually taught it to somebody else. So that made a big difference for me.
Awesome. So what do you recommend people go to college if they want to become a programmer?
Yeah, good question. So I actually get that question quite a fair amount. And I have I actually had somebody who was writing a blog post about this subject send me a couple questions, and I put those all on my GitHub AMA. And so you can maybe search for that to get a more holistic answer. But basically my answer is not really. So like I wouldn't go to college if I just wanted to learn how to program and get a job. I might go to college if I was still like if I was having a really hard time getting my foot in the door at a company, like, or just getting started in my career as a developer, because having that degree, especially a master's degree, helps me avoid the resume filters that you find at companies. Now it doesn't matter at all. I don't get jobs because I submitted an application anymore. It's referrals, and so that's why building a network is really useful. But at the beginning of my career, nobody knew me, and so I needed to have a resume that could get me through the door, and so having a master's degree on my resume was pretty helpful. But I think that's a failing of the system. Not that I needed to have that degree, but just that our system is designed around the need of that thing on your resume, which I think is totally bogus. Most of the people on my team, at my last team, were straight out of a boot camp, didn't have degrees, and they're fantastic developers. So so I'm glad that PayPal, at least on the team I was on, we were able to see past the resume into the skill that was behind it. As far as like whether to go to school, the other things that I learned when I was at school was like how to deal with deadlines in a less, I guess, important situation, and how to like work in teams and stuff. But like most of the like programming stuff that I learned, I could have learned it all myself. Like nobody taught me how to do JOT authentication when I was in school. Like nobody taught me how to do like most of the things that I know now, I did not learn in school as far as like programming stuff is concerned. So if I were today, like let's say that I'm an auto mechanic today and I'm trying to support 4 kids and my wife, enable my wife to stay at home to take care of them while I work. And I decide, okay, I'm going to pivot to software. What I would do is I would see if maybe I could do a boot camp, because the value I see out of a boot camp is it kind of gives you some curriculum and structure around what you're learning.
Yeah.
But if you can do that for yourself, then I don't think that's necessary. I'd probably tried the free code camp thing. I haven't really looked into the curriculum too much, but a lot of people I respect have said that it's super good, so I trust them, and so I would probably try something like that, just on after hours or something, because the real way that you gain experience is by doing things that give you experience, like building stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably what I would do. I would not go back to school if I were trying to pivot my career or something. No way I'd go back to school for that.
Right. Yeah. 4 years or 2 years is way too long.
Yeah.
And too much
totally.
money.
Yeah. Well, and by the technology that's relevant when you start is totally different from the technology that's relevant when you end. So what are they teaching you between? Are they like changing what they're teaching you as you go through the program? I hope so, because otherwise what you're learning is irrelevant. And they're not teaching that. In fact, what you are learning when you start is already at least 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah, at least. Yeah,
so,
I didn't learn version control or anything that's relevant to what I do now.
Yep. My team at school, we taught ourselves version control because we're like, this looks like a good idea. The teacher did not use version control.
Yeah, actually what we did is there was this new thing that came out called Dropbox. And we tried we used Dropbox as our version control.
Dude, I did that too, actually. Before I started using Git, I was like, dude, guys, check this thing out. We could just put our project in Dropbox. All right, everybody, don't edit this file.
Yeah.
Because I'm editing this file.
Yeah, we would all be on chat at the same time and telling each other what file we were working on.
Yeah, I totally can relate. And then you'd have like, oh shoot, I saved it. Oh, and now you've got 2 versions of that file with our names on them.
Yeah.
Just so. All right, time to manually merge those. Oh gosh.
So much better than trying to be in the same room and emailing each other, though.
Yo, yeah, I did that too. Totally, you're right.
All right, so you mentioned teaching. At what point do you start teaching?
Yeah, good question. So like. You can start teaching other people what you're learning immediately. So as soon as you've learned something new, you probably know something that lots of people don't know yet. And so like whether that's like in school, I was able to teach my classmates what I was learning, and that was really nice. I had a school full of people who didn't know some things that I knew, so it was really easy for me to organize some unofficial thing and just have an excuse to teach people stuff, and they were willing to come because because I don't know, they wanted to learn stuff. They're students. And so, yeah, that was really nice. But yeah, as soon as I learned something new, I feel like as soon as you learn something new, you can start teaching about it. And so you can like just teach it to one person, just one-on-one. You could record a video and put it up on YouTube. You could write a blog post. But whatever you do, whatever you're learning, you can teach what you learn. In fact, like it might not be a bad idea to once a week, actually it'd be a fantastic idea to once a week try to distill the things that you learned in a blog post. And this is how like Chris Coyier, who does CSS tricks, this is how he started. He just like every single week he would write a blog post, just one blog post about something that he learned. And now CSS tricks is one of the biggest blogs about software development on the internet. And it's all just that once a week you just say something that you learned. So yeah, that would also, like, if I were transitioning from auto mechanic, that'd be another thing that I would start doing right away with the knowledge that I have now. That's something I would hope I would do, is every week just take the things that I learned that last week and write a blog post about it. It doesn't have to be long. It could be like 1,000 words or something, 1,000 characters, whatever. Yeah, I think that's like the key takeaway there is you're not too inexperienced to teach something, even if you're teaching like your teenager kids or something. Like you can teach somebody something.
Okay, cool. And then as far as building stuff, what kind of stuff would you recommend people to build when they're first getting started?
Yeah, that's a great question. For building stuff, like there's a changelog episode. I think it's episode 200. That number stands out in my mind, so it's easy to remember. But it's with Raquel Vasquez, and she's Rockbot on Twitter, which I think is the coolest Twitter handle. But what she says in there, I thought was really enlightening. She said that like she always struggled learning math because the teachers were always like, so we're going to teach you this algorithm and you're just going to memorize it and Pythagorean theorem, whatever. And she was like, well, why? This just doesn't make any sense. But then at some point or somebody had her like build something and she had to work backwards to gain the knowledge she needed to build that thing. And she was really excited. So she says, like, don't pick a topic that you want to learn about necessarily. Pick a thing that you want to build, and then you work backwards to acquire the knowledge that you need to build that thing. And so your question was like, how do you know what to build? Well, think of things that that you want to exist. Like one thing I wanted to exist when I was in school was I wanted something that was better than Facebook at compartmentalizing the types of things that I'm interested in. So I actually, as kind of a proof of concept, I built this app that would pull in my Facebook feed, and then I could rank it pulled 100 things from my Facebook feed, and then I would rank each one from 0 to 5 on how interested that thing was to me. And so you could go through this really fast. I did like keyboard shortcuts and stuff, and by the end of it, it'd be like, you're interested in an average of 17% of your feed, which is totally a normal number. Like I tried this app on tons of people, like 17%. It's like, okay, Facebook, this is kind of dumb. So I built that app because I wanted to prove that something better than Facebook was necessary and like worth my time. And so then I started building my own Facebook thing. It's called Bucket Streams, and it's super cool. And I never got to finish it or actually release it. But there's a video on YouTube that is like a Bucket Streams Stories episode 1, the only episode ever. But it was like explained what Bucket Streams is all about. It's super cool. But the process of building that thing that I wanted to have exist taught me insane amounts of things. Like one of the things I learned from building that was JOT authentication, because I needed to support multiple domains, and in the process of learning that, I took that learning and made a talk out of it that I gave at a meetup here in Utah. And that meetup talk was actually recorded and made viewable publicly online on YouTube. And the creator of Egghead.io, John Lindquist, saw that video and asked me to turn that into an Egghead course. So I decided, let's go through that again. I decided that I wanted to build something. In the process of building that, I learned something that I thought was interesting, and I turned that learning into a teaching opportunity at a meetup. And that teaching opportunity was made public, which I think is really important. Try to make all the things you teach public. So that teaching opportunity was made public, and then somebody saw it and gave me an even better opportunity. And that was my first Egghead.io course. And that changed it changed so much about my life experience. And when I started teaching for Egghead, a lot of new opportunities came my way. So yeah, just build something that you want to have exist in the world. And like Bucket Streams doesn't exist anymore. In fact, I just let the service I was using to host it wanted me to migrate to a new version, and I'm not going to spend time on that. So it just got shut down. And so it doesn't even exist anymore. You can't go to it. But the things that I learned from that experience will never leave, and it totally changed my life. So, like, if you want to build a Facebook clone, like something to kill Facebook, like, don't listen to the people who say that it can't be done. They're probably right, but you're going to learn so much out of that experience that it's worth it anyway. So.
Cool. So what do you do when you get stuck on this project that you're working on?
Oh man, that's the best part. It doesn't feel like it, but it is. So like just going on with that JOT authentication thing, I started just using cookies for authentication, just passing the user information in a cookie, and that was working great. But then I wanted to build a mobile app, and that wasn't working because I couldn't communicate across that domain somehow. I still don't totally understand why that didn't work. But those HTTP requests just didn't. You can't set the cookie. I think actually no. What happened was I was building an Ionic app because this is all Angular stuff, and when I was testing it, I had to test it on a different domain from localhost, and so the cookie, it can't be set cross domain. That's what was going on. And so I was just like banging my head against the wall. Why is this not working? I was like Googling cookies and stuff, and I couldn't find anything. So I finally got on IRC because that was still a thing back then. It still is a thing today, but I refuse to use IRC. But back then that was the thing, and I got an Angular IRC channel, and I just said, hey, listen, here's my problem. I'm really struggling with this. Does anybody have any idea? And Rob Wormald, who was just like fantastic at answering people's questions, is so helpful in IRC. He was like, oh, what you need is JOTs. And I was like, what's a JOT? He's like, oh man, I'm going to change your life. And he explained to me what a JOT was and gave me some material to look up, and he did. He changed my life. So I think when I get stuck, you work on it or like you hack at it for 20 minutes, but probably don't want to waste too much time on it. Once you can't figure out what's going on, then try to make a reproducible example that's like separate from your app. Just try to rebuild this thing in a small example, as small as you can. And in the process, you're probably going to reveal that the problem isn't what you think it is. And that will help you identify what the real problem is. But if you can reproduce it in a small example, it's also easier to debug. So you can maybe spend a little bit more time in there debugging that. And if you still can't figure it out, then go to StackOverflow or like a support community mailing list or chat or something, and share your reproducible example with somebody. And hopefully somebody responds to your question, because most of the time you'll probably get a response. If you ask your question well enough, you'll probably get a response from somebody.
Nice. And would you recommend having that reproducible example somewhere online when you ask your
Yeah,
question?
definitely. I would just put it on GitHub. I put everything on GitHub.
Okay. Or you could do some sort of interactive thing like CodePen, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. In fact, that's even better. So like if it's, say you're having trouble with the downshift library or something, then you just go to like Code Sandbox or CodePen or what's that other one? It's like, I can't remember what it's called.
So many.
Yeah, there are a bunch.
And I think Stack Overflow has a way for you to have code that runs right on the site now, but I've never used it.
Yeah, they'll run your code if it's like JavaScript, HTML, and CSS too. So that's kind of cool. Make your reproducible easy to run as possible. Like you want to, you're asking people to help you, and like you're not paying for them to do that. So you want to make it as easy as possible. Yeah,
and you're also you shouldn't just go on there and ask them to write code for you.
Yeah, I've had that too, and that's nobody likes that. You are not going to get help if you do that.
So, how did you get this opportunity to talk at the meetup? Did you just approach the organizers and say, "Hey, I've got an idea to talk"?
Yeah. Meetups are like constantly looking for speakers, like always looking. Even like the day of, they'll like send a message out and be like, "Hey, we need speakers." And so yeah, it's pretty easy to get up. I don't normally use the word easy, but this is one thing where it's pretty easy to get a spot at a meetup most of the time, unless you're trying to speak at one of those really insanely popular meetups, like there's one in Boston and one in the Bay, and for like the React one in the Bay, like the tickets sell out immediately. Well, they don't sell it. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. But yeah, so some meetups might be a little harder, but most of the time meetups are really easy to get a spot in to speak. And and then you just share your thoughts. Like the nice thing about meetups is if somebody, like if you're worried that nobody's going to be interested in what you're talking about, first of all, you're probably wrong. People are probably interested. But second of all, if people aren't really interested, they're not actually going to the meetup to like necessarily learn all the stuff that's being taught there. Lots of people are there just to rub shoulders with other developers that they don't work with. At least that's one of the main reasons I go. And so like it's not a total loss if your talk ends up not being interesting to them. So don't worry about that. And it'll be a great experience.
What kind of talk do you recommend giving at a meetup? You could give, a live coding demo or something with just slides, or something where they're supposed to follow along like a workshop. What works well?
Yeah, good question. So my first talk, it was actually interesting. So I wrote a library called Genie.js that is, I think, still pretty neat. And I just like I'd never actually been to a meetup before, but I'd heard about them because I'd listened to podcasts that like would say, and this meetup thing. And so I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And I went to the meetup.com page and I noticed they needed a speaker, and I had this library and I thought, oh, that'd be cool to talk about my library. So I'm kind of maybe like I'm a bit extroverted. I always have loved talking in front of people and stuff. And so I just reached out and said, hey, I have this library I could talk about, and you want to, like, can I talk about it? He's like, yeah, sure. Who are you? And but he didn't ask me who I was. He was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And so yeah, my first ever meetup. Luckily I wasn't the first speaker, but my first talk was, I actually, that day when I got accepted, the meetup was that night, and I built an app that was like a follow through this thing to learn about the library, and I just walked them through the app. So that was kind of cool. That's like, there are a lot of really interesting side effects from speaking, where you build libraries to make things easier, or you build tools to make things easier so that your talk is cooler. That's where Redux came from.
Yeah.
So I built an app to make my talk easier. What I would recommend though is probably like just tell a story. You can use slides. There's nothing wrong with slides. I use slides all the time. I use slides.com because it's really easy to make slides on there. And yeah, just tell a story of a time where you like totally failed and some things that you learned from that, or teach about a specific technology and you can use slides for that. You can, if you want to, you can live code. Just be aware that like live coding can sometimes go horribly wrong if you're not practiced. So you want to practice that a lot. I live code sometimes. I really like live coding myself, but let's see that. Yeah, they're like there's not really any particular like for your first talk do this kind of advice. Just do whatever you feel comfortable with. Like I've seen somebody go up and just say like they asked the organizer if they could give like a 5-minute talk, and that's totally cool. The organizer's probably like, yeah, sure. And so like I saw somebody go up and give a 5-minute talk without any notes or slides or anything. They just went up and told a story about what happened and what they learned from it, and it was really cool. So yeah, you can do all kinds of things that, yeah, and you practice. I think when you're giving talks, you want to practice as much as you can if you want to do a good job. So like I'll practice in front of the mirror, or I'll like just practice in front of nothing, just in my office. Sometimes I'll practice and live stream my practice run on Twitch, and people can give me feedback. I've practiced with my wife a couple times, and she is like super duper supportive. But she, I sometimes worry that she's bored by the stuff that I sometimes talk about. So yeah, get somebody who's interested and invested in you being successful. And that can be your spouse if you're married. So yeah, just a couple ideas there.
Cool. Yeah, I like that idea about just asking if you do a 5-minute talk, because it doesn't have to be a whole hour. A whole hour totally can sound really intimidating. Yeah. My first talk was like 20 minutes or 15 minutes. So. Yeah. So what would you say to more introverted people that aren't excited about getting up and talking in front of people, or if you're scared of having it recorded and putting on YouTube?
Yeah, that's great. So like I said, I'm definitely not introverted. I love my stuff being as public as possible, and unfortunately that's like one of the key elements to me having the opportunities that I've had has been making as much as I do public. But if that's not something you're interested in, or like you just don't want to be recorded or something, that's totally cool too. There are lots of other things that you can do to share your knowledge with people. You could do more one-on-one things where you have a smaller impact in terms of the number of people you impact, but maybe a bigger impact on the one person that you're talking with. And you could write blog posts, and those get like blog posts are actually probably get the most amount of engagement of anything that I do. I'm not sure why that is, because I actually don't like reading blog posts very much. But lots of people like blog posts. So, and that's a good way to, not have your face or your likeness recorded if that's something you want to avoid. You can make a repository that's like a workshop style repository or tutorial or something. Lots and lots of ways to share your knowledge without sharing your face.
Cool. Do you recommend using a blogging platform or your own site?
Yeah, good question. So at first, when you're just getting started, what you need is like people to discover you and your content. And that's hard to do if you just do your own site. Like you're not going to get quite as much engagement. The other thing is that you could get tied up in the process of creating your own site. Yeah. Which like will teach you a lot of stuff. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You'll learn a lot, but you're not gonna push your way forward and getting like an audience by working on your site. So I actually recommend using a platform, an existing platform for stuff like this. So if you're doing screencasts or something, YouTube is great. And if you can get into something like Egghead, then that's awesome too. Medium is what I use actually. Even now, I could probably branch off onto my own blog, but I don't want to waste time working on my site. I have other things I want to work on, so I just use Medium. I do have a custom URL and publication on Medium. So like if I decided to branch off Medium, and then I can make all the links work and stuff, which is nice.
Nice.
So using an existing platform is probably what I'd recommend for people. Go where the audience is, rather than expecting the audience to come to you, because they probably won't when nobody, like when you're just getting started and nobody knows who you are.
Right. Yeah, totally. I've been using my own site, and there's one blog post that has a ton of traffic just because people are searching for it and not finding it anywhere else. But other than that one,
nothing.
Yeah, no one can find it, of course.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about giving back and reaching the most people possible. What do you see as the importance of giving back?
For me, I'm actually in an insanely privileged situation myself. Like, I had, a stable family growing up. I didn't have to worry about that. I went to school. I was able to pay for college and everything. I didn't have to worry about paying my family's bills or whatever. Just given so many opportunities outside of my own actions and things. And so I kind of feel, because of all of that privilege that I've been given, I feel compelled to give back, because like I just feel like it's my moral obligation to give back. And so that's like a big reason why I make so much of I do so much work for free, is so that I can try to give improved opportunities for other people. So I have a YouTube channel with a lot of educational material for people to go learn stuff from, and I do a lot of open source stuff to make it other people more effective and things. And I blog and teach in part to solidify my own understanding, but also to make kind of lift others, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of why I give back, is I just feel compelled to do that from a moral obligation standpoint. And then on top of that, it does a lot for my career. I got my job at PayPal because people know who I am. And so that it's already paid off really nicely. Making it, the other thing is, you're probably already doing a lot of work, putting a lot of effort out into the world. And if you can somehow for example, you're having this conversation with somebody about Git, you're they're teaching you or you're teaching them or something, and that exchange has a lot of value inside of it. And if you can somehow capture that value and then spread it in a public way, then you increase that impact exponentially. And so when I want to learn about Git or something from somebody, instead of just having a one-on-one video chat conversation, I will ask them if they're cool if I record it and put it on YouTube. And now all of a sudden, that impact and that giving back is happening just naturally. The other part of that is people are more willing to have those kinds of conversations with me when they know that the impact will be bigger than just me. Mm-hmm. And so I've been able to have some really cool conversations. I call these tech chats, and you can find them on my YouTube channel. I've got 25 of these now.
Cool.
So lots of the giving back that I do is me taking the value that I'm creating and capturing that to share it with the world. Whether I'm the one actually creating the value or somebody else is creating the value, but finding a way to capture that, whether it's recording it or transcribing it or something, it often takes a little bit more work than it would otherwise, but the payout off is totally worth it, and you feel good about yourself for giving back.
All right. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I'm excited for the episodes I have coming up next. and I have an exciting announcement coming up soon that I can't wait to share. You can follow the show on Twitter at Web of Tomorrow FM, and I'm at Agarhar, Agarrharr.